Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the official launch of the Meta Games Industry Index. My name's Richard Dawson. I'm the content editor here at UMi. We're the founders of this campaign alongside our industry partner UKI, the trade body for the UK games sector, as well as RLC Ventures and Sheridan's Law, our campaign sponsors. So we're super excited to finally be able to share the index with you. So thanks very much for being here this morning. But before we get started, I'd just like to explain to you a little bit about UMi and why we've decided to launch this campaign focused on the UK games industry. So for those of you that haven't heard of UMi before, we're a company that was founded to help other businesses do more and go further by finding and packaging the best information, expertise, and finance. So we do that through a number of business support and funding schemes that we run right across the UK, and also through our exciting new platform, which we launched last year as well. In terms of our history, so since 2007, we've helped around 450,000 businesses through our various different support services. We're really passionate about business success, which is exactly why we decided to launch this campaign. So we've been looking at the UK games industry like many others have, because it's fair to say that it is absolutely booming right now. It's one of the fastest growing sectors of the UK economy. So that revenues grew by 29% in 2020 alone. I'm sure lockdowns and COVID had a little bit of a role to play in that. Gaming's also overtaken in film in terms of its size, which is quite staggering really when you consider how young the industry is. There's also a ton of M&A and investment activity happening, which really excites us. Microsoft's recent purchase of Activision Blizzard for something like 75 billion recently being a good example of what's happening globally. So yeah, we wanted to create a campaign that really harnesses the sense of optimism and potential around the games sector at the moment, while also celebrating some of the smaller independent games companies, because we feel that's where a lot of the innovation and good work is happening. So typically when we launch these index campaigns at UMi, we run them for around 6 months. But we felt with the Meta Index that we would look at a slightly longer time frame to make sure that all of the companies that wanted to could get their nominations in. Hence why we're officially launching the 2021 index in 2022. But it's been worth the wait, though. I think we've had a fantastic response to our call out for nominations. We've received applications from mainly independent game development studios, which is great because that's who we were targeting, but also other types of companies that are doing amazing things in the sector as well. So yeah, I think we can say with some authority that the 2021 index is representative of all that's exciting about the game sector at the moment. But we'll come on to the index and all of that great stuff a little bit later on. So yes, in terms of the format for today's session, it's relatively straightforward. We've got two brilliant keynote speakers to get us underway, the first of which I'll introduce in just a moment. Then we'll take a 15-minute break at 11:15 and return for a panel discussion at 11:30, speaking to some experts from the games industry about kind of current challenges and opportunities. And then finally, we'll be having the big reveal of which companies have made it into the 2021 Meta Games Index. And I'll be joined by two of those companies, two which our judges thought were really outstanding. There'll also be an opportunity for networking afterwards. And if at any point you have any questions, please do make use of the Q&A and chat functions on your screen. I'll try and get through as many questions as possible. You can also join the conversation on social media as well with the hashtag at Meta Games Index, hashtag Meta Games Index. And we've got our own Twitter page as well, which is at Meta Games Index _. So yeah, do reach out to us on social as well. So that's quite enough from me. And all that remains is to introduce our first speaker this morning, which I'm delighted to say is games industry pioneer Sir Ian Livingstone. Note the Sir. So fresh off the back of his knighthood in the New Year's Honours, congratulations, by the way. Sir Ian's going to be talking to us about what it takes to grow a successful game studio, something it's fair to say he knows a thing or two about. Sir Ian will be well known to many of you as one of the founding fathers of British gaming. He set up Games Workshop in 1975. He co-authored the Fight and Fantasy game book series and has been a part really of many of the key developments in UK gaming in the years since. So we're absolutely delighted to have him with us this morning. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, for taking the time out to celebrate with us today. And if we're ready to go, I'll just hand over to Sir Ian now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to speak to you today and tell you about my journey in games, and then hopefully leverage some of my experience and pass it on to you to help you become successful in your ambition. So, as was described in the intro, I joined the games industry not long after chess was invented. I've been in it some 47 years, as described. From these are kind of the milestones in my career. Games Workshop in '75, Final Fantasy game books in the '80s. I think the '90s was really down to when I was chairman of IDOS launching Tomb Raider, and then I became an angel investor in companies like Playdemic and Mediatonic. Then I became chairman of Sumo Group, which was last week was sold to Tencent for $1.3 billion. And last but not least, I'm a partner in a venture capital company called Hero Capital, where we fund games companies in particular and help at Series A, which is an investment between £1 and £3 million, and Series B, which is £3 to £7 million. But before we get to that stage, I'll tell you a little bit about my angel investing and a little bit about my career in games. So, as was first was it's 1975. I turned my hobby of playing games into a business. We launched Games Workshop and were able to become the distributors of Dungeons and Dragons. We ordered 6 copies from Gary Gygax, who just invented it. And on the back of that order, we got a 3-year exclusive distribution agreement for the whole of Europe. Such was the embryonic industry at the time that we were able to get these crazy deals and start our own journey in the games industry. But it wasn't all easy, of course. We had to live in a van for 3 months because you couldn't get bank finance. People had no understanding of what the games industry was because it wasn't really an industry. But when you're driven by passion, and I'm sure most of you are, it's not hardship. It's an absolute pleasure to be on that journey. We went to the bank manager and asked for a loan, and he kind of laughed at us rather like a dog watching television. And we were obliged to live in a van, Steve's van, for 3 months, which was not the most pleasurable thing. But we managed to open our first shop in 1978 in Hammersmith, West London, and we were delighted to see so many people outside on that rainy April day who are equally enthusiastic about the games that we enjoy playing ourselves. And Workshop, of course, grew. When we lost the exclusive distribution agreement for Dungeons and Dragons, we, as a company, came up with the Warhammer franchise, designed by Richard Halliwell, Rick Priestley, and Brian Ansell. And Workshop, even though we sold out in 1991, continued to grow, went onto public markets, and now worth £4 billion at the last time I looked at the share price. So it's an extraordinary success story built on intellectual property ownership. And that's one thing I would say early on. Try and retain ownership of your intellectual property, because that's how it builds real value. That's how you control your own destiny. If we'd just been distributors of Dungeons and Dragons, ultimately Workshop wouldn't have been as successful because we didn't actually own D&D, whereas we owned Warhammer. And as we all know, that the Warhammer franchise has been extraordinary, gone beyond the miniatures and tabletop battles to become big video games franchise as well, and underpins the value of Workshop on the public markets. And a little plug here, I'm writing a book about the first 10 years of Workshop. It's going to be out in September. And if anybody wants to pledge their support to that book, you can just look at here, unbound.com, Games Workshop, which is about the history of our first 10 years at Workshop, all warts and all. So next thing we did was Steve Jackson and I was to create the Final Fantasy game book phenomenon. They sold 20 million copies. These are books in which you are the hero, effectively analog hypertext branching narrative with a game system attached. They were kind of a predecessor to video games in many ways, and they got a whole generation of children learning and reading, which was great at the time because boys in particular didn't enjoy reading. And yet, because they had this word game book, society viewed them dismally in many ways. The Evangelical Alliance published an 8-page warning guide saying because you're interacted with ghouls and demons, you're bound to get possessed by the devil. A worried housewife in deepest suburbia phoned a local radio station, said, having read one of my books, a child levitated. There were petitions sent in, all because of the people were scared of that word game. And as we all know, games are a contextual hub for learning. And when it comes to video games, of course, the media used to, not so bad these days, are going to an apoplectic frenzy when discussing the merits of games. And when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, a huge British success story, generated $1 billion in 3 days of sales, the largest entertainment franchise in any media. The reporting of it was largely negative rather than positive, celebrating this incredible technological and creative achievement. And so I'd argue games are actually good for you. They're social, they're good for rehabilitation, they're good for problem solving, they give you continuous assessment, you're not punished for making a mistake. Games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, effectively a management simulation, contextualizing learning about the physics of building a ride, the economy of running those rides, etc. And games like Minecraft are so good for effectively digital Lego. Children are constructing their environments and sharing them with their friends. Child learns that applying the heat of a furnace to silica sand produces glass, and by that learning by doing is never forgotten. This is a $200 billion a year industry now, 3 billion gamers worldwide, and it continues to grow at an incredible rate. And you can see the pervasive nature of games. They are everywhere, and technology drives innovation. We're seeing now VR coming along and esports, and it really defines how entertainment is in the new economy. That interactive digital component makes it a compelling reason to be in this industry. And there's never been a better time, I would say, to be in the games industry than today. In the old days, when we were publishing Tomb Raider in boxes, these were boxes that sold at a premium price, navigating the distribution channel, ultimately to get to a customer who may or may not like that game, and if they return those games, it was obviously had an impact on cash flow and also on profitability. But today, of course, it's a digital proposition. Games are created digitally, they are consumed digitally, and you're able to address a global market on whatever platform you desire, whether it's smartphones, digital consoles, or PCs. There's never been a better time to monetize a global audience with whatever content you're serving. I got into video games in the 80s. I designed the launch product of a small company called Domark. I joined Domark after selling out of Workshop in 1991, and we put 4 companies together to create Newco Eidos, which floated on London Stock Exchange. Of course, Eidos most famous for Lara Croft Tomb Raider, designed by Toby Gard, Lara Croft, and the game was developed by Core Design, a company which we owned in those days. But fast forward to today, there are some 2,000 game studios around the UK. This is an incredible phenomenon because we are very, very good at making games. A lot of games companies, of course, are micro studios, but they're on the way to maybe doing something spectacular. The challenges that face companies today is access to talent and access to funding. Are there enough artists, software engineers, artists, animators for the games industry, let alone the rest of the creative industries? And what method of funding are you going to get to accelerate your developments? Are you going to bootstrap it? Are you going to try and get a bank loan, which we failed to do with Workshop? Banks not really interested in funding industries like the games industry. Are you going to get project finance? Are you going to get publisher funding? Are you going to sell equity in your company? These are all questions that you will be presented with as you grow. The government has been good in establishing the EIS and SEIS scheme. This makes it very tax advantageous for people to invest in your companies. I would definitely recommend investigating that way of raising equity funding. When I left Eidos, when it was acquired by Square Enix, I became an angel investor in some great companies. These are the companies I've invested in. I had 3 exits with Sumo, Playdemic, and Mediatonic, and they're very excited about some of the investments I'm making. So I don't just invest, I also give companies I invest in as much information, knowledge, around the market, around games design, around monetization as I possibly can. But before we do, and you'll be expected to answer a number of questions by whoever you might think about being invested by, about the team. What do I look for? I look for not just one person who's in control. I like to see a CEO on an equal footing with the creative director, and they enable each other to be successful. Clearly, the game is important. When people ask me the three most important things about a game, I will say gameplay, gameplay, gameplay. Graphics and technology, although vitally important, play a supporting role. I need to know what technology you actually own, what IP do you own. I need to understand, if you understand the monetization of games, how you're going to acquire, retain, and monetize people over time, running games as a service. Um, what is your attitude to data science and analytics to be able to optimize a game, the monetization, and what your knowledge is of the total addressable market is, and the competitors in that landscape, and have you actually invested yourselves in the game? It gives great comfort if people have not just suffered a little like we did in the workshop days, but to be personally invested in the game gives great comfort to anybody who wants to invest in your company. And then what's your attitude for scale? Do you want to remain a cottage industry whereby you have a very nice life with a small company, not having to be accountable to investors, or do you want to actually build the next Activision or Tencent? What's your personal ambition? And understanding value. If you do take on investment, don't rush out and buy, flash cars, because investment is not profit. It allows you to create profit. So how are you going to use those funds? Which people are you going to get? Hire the best people and make the best games, but try and stay away from buying flash cars. That should not be the motivation. So, as I said, I'm now in the VC space, the venture capital space, which enables people to scale their businesses. And the reason I did that, because we're so good in the UK and Europe, particular, at creating content. We've always been punching above our weight in that space, but always been underserved by capital. Until recently, only 2% of game studios have been able to get VC funding, despite the number of studios there are in the UK. So that's why I started Hero Capital with my two partners, Luke Alvarez and Cherry Freeman. They're both Cambridge first, super smart people. I'm the games geek in the partnership, and it's a $150 million fund, and we've made 20 investments to date. And of course, I'll be delighted to speak to anybody who is looking for VC funding. So why do we do it? Well, there is a lot of ability for people to get initial investments in their companies, or they bootstrap, or they raise from friends and family. And then later on in their journey, there's lots of people who will provide big ticket financing to scale existing businesses. And of course, there's always an exit to some of the big players. Some we've heard about recently, for example, Sumo being acquired by Tencent. But it's that gap that's the kind of valley of death where people have got going, but they don't have enough money to scale the businesses, so it holds them back unnecessarily. And so we would always advise people to look at investment to grow. We didn't at Workshop. We funded everything out of cash flows, and that really inhibited our ability to scale. And it was 3 years before we opened our first shop. So if you have investment in your company, it's not a question of giving up control. You don't give up control. VCs only want a small part of your business because they want you to be motivated to be successful. But what we can do is provide the funding to give you runway to do what you want to do without feeling any pressure. Don't have to rush products out to market. You can hire the best people, and then you can do it with knowledge and help from the VC party, whoever they might be. If it's not Hero, we're here to help as well as to fund. So if you are interested in hearing from us or being talked with us, please contact us at this email address, hello@hero.capital. So I would argue that the video games industry ticks all the right boxes for the new economy. It's digital, high tech, high skills, export focus, IP creating, regional, and it's future proof. It's an extraordinary British success story. We build incredible intellectual property in this country. But the important thing is to hang on to ownership of that property, move further up the value chain before you sell out. And that's again what funding can help you achieve. You don't have to sell out to be able to continue. So do what you're good at. And here's a couple of tips that I've able to pass on to you that I've learned over time. So do not be afraid of failure, but fail fast. Failure is just seen as work. Success, work in progress. Return ownership of your intellectual property. Try not to trade it away for project finance. Do what you're good at and partner with somebody to do the jobs that you don't want to do or can't do. Ideas are cheap. It's the execution of the idea which is the hard bit. So many times I heard people say, "Oh, I had that idea," and I usually say to them, "Well, why didn't you do it?" It's hindsight is a wonderful thing, but it's the execution of the idea that is so key. And don't be motivated by making money. That should be a byproduct of the success of doing something that you really enjoy. It's an absolute privilege to be in this industry. And try to be different if you can, and be yourself and follow your heart. And if you are considering getting investors into your company, make sure you're investor ready. Don't just present someone with a with a small slideshow. You have to be able to demonstrate all those things I was talking about previously, especially having some skin in the game to show that you invested in yourself before asking others to invest in you. And understand the business of video games and make sure that your business is supported by data. Not saying data should be the design start of a game. Obviously, it's not, but data can help that game become better over time, optimize everything, and ultimately lead to a long tail of revenue from your games. So, if all else fails, make sure the icon in your game has an open mouth. They're usually more successful on the App Store. If you're thinking about a game on smartphones, and I guess that's it from me. So, thank you very much. I'd be delighted to answer any questions.
About the icons with the open mouths that do better on the App Store.
Apparently, yeah.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. No, Ian, it's always brilliant to hear from you. And one of the things I love most is that, despite having been in the industry, longer than most of the people who are part of it, that you haven't lost that enthusiasm for it at all. And thanks so much for that overview. So yeah, in terms of a few questions for you. I've got a couple myself, and then we'll come on to some that have been asked as well. So you've invested in a lot of companies in your own right as an angel investor and as part of Hero Capital. What are some of the best sort of companies? Who are some of the founders, or are there any that really stand out where you thought, wow, that was a fantastic investment?
Well, the three exits I've had, I mean, all the companies I've invested in have a common denominator. I think I said right at the outset, it's a team at the top. It's a great business person who's working on an equal basis with the great creative visionary, and they effectively enable each other. But they should not. No one should give up creative control, but you should get somebody who's going to do all the stuff that you are not able to do or you shouldn't be doing. There's no reason why creative visionaries should be, doing the VAT returns, or ordering toilet rolls, or doing the accounts. It's a complete waste of their time, and having to raise money because the chances are they won't know how to do it properly. So the business driver, the CEO, should be able to help the creative visionary scale a business successfully and make sure all the traps are overcome, whether it's somebody trying to get their IP, someone trying to buy them out early before they realize full value, and how to get funding and hiring people. This is a team thing, and that's absolutely the case in the three exits I've had with Sumo, and with the board there, with Carl Cave as the CEO, and Paul Porter and David Wilson. Extraordinary team there, working fantastically together. Never, of course, let the accountants decide what products you're going to make. No, I mean, that'd be a recipe of success. But if everybody works together, they're going to do great things. In Playdemic, it was Paul Googe and Alex Rigby. Alex Rigby, the creative genius. Paul Googe, the CEO, driving that business. With Mediatonic, it was Dave Bailey and Paul Croft as the creative there. There's these super teams of being able to not just come up with games, but being able to scale their company as well. So it's no coincidence that those companies were successful.
Yeah, that complementary relationship between the sort of the CEO or the operations side and the creative side is really important. Okay, we've had tons of questions come through just in the last couple of minutes. So kind of leading on from
I'm
the
still
last.
looking at my screen, my PowerPoint, so I don't feel to
Are
get
you
rid
still locked on that, right? Well, I'll fill in the gaps for you. So Danny Hayes asks, what would be your biggest turn-off when investing in an indie? I suppose what would dissuade you from investing in a studio?
Well, it's that checklist that I went through. If there are a few of those X's instead of ticks in those boxes, make me have reservations. And people sometimes make an assumption, or they start talking about Me Too products. So it's like Tomb Raider, but it's better, or it's going to be a blockchain game, but we don't really know anything about cryptocurrency. It's if people have an ambition but not the knowledge to support it, that obviously worries me. And this is a people business. I invest in people more than I do invest in the business. So you have to get on with people, and you have to have belief in people. And so people have invested in have ticked an awful lot of boxes on their ability to execute on the ideas rather than just have the ideas.
Yeah, and on that people point as well. So Dan Baird's asked, are companies that are focused on growing new talent as part of their operation an attractive proposition, or is that, would you say, too risky? So I guess the difference between looking at the potential of a team versus a team which has established industry players behind it.
I'm all for inspiring new talent to join, but you have to do it as and when you're able to do so. So obviously, a new company should have experience in the sector, and then hopefully have had some previous games published before they decide to go it alone. But I would always recommend people learn their craft at effectively other people's expense, i.e., get a job, learn the business of games before setting up your own company. Again, that gives comfort to investors.
Okay, and then Marcus Gardner's asked, is angel investment just for mid to large studios, or are there opportunities for small indie studios, less than 10 people, that create
Absolutely. I
small
mean,
projects?
angel investment is for startups.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, most of those companies on that slide I showed were startups.
yeah. So so for the angel investor, it's more about investing in the opportunity rather
Yeah,
than.
the angel investor gets the company to the stage where the VC can then make a much bigger investment to help scale an existing business.
Okay, yeah. Because I guess in the later funding rounds, it perhaps isn't as attractive to the angel investor who be able to help
No,
more
they
with the
start
initial.
writing big tickets then, and it depends on your capacity to be able to do it as an angel. But when you start investing the millions, then that has to come from funds rather than individuals.
Okay. And an interesting one here from Sally Blake, I think it is. So, how do you feel about newer monetization models, i.e., F2P microtransactions, and so on, or versus more old school models where you just buy the game and own the game? There's a lot of these in-game purchases and things like that. Is that something that you think about much, Ian?
Well, most of those studios I've invested in have adopted the free-to-play model and upselling content over time and running games as a service, often free at the point of delivery, and then monetizing as people come on board. So clearly, free-to-play is the dominant way of operating mobile games in particular. But of course, you can pay premium price on Steam and digital console, of course. So there's no hard and fast rule. It's whatever suits the studio and
Yeah.
whether it's an addressable market for people. But you have to get your business model absolutely nailed. You can't retrofit monetization once the game's built.
Yeah, so it's sort of like I guess the Fortnite model versus the sort of the Call of Duty model being the two, and it depends on what the what the mission is from the business for the outset.
Exactly.
But do you think the industry's moving in more of a sort of free to play direction?
Yeah, no question. I mean, the whole of Asia is free to play. There's no games of premium out in China, for example, and or Korea, and these are huge markets. They've driven the free to play model.
Okay. And then one final question from Suzanne. So, how important is it to consider the responsible business agenda in the games industry? So, I guess that's things like sort of sustainability and
Yeah,
ESG, and is that a consideration for you, Ian?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the key components of Hero Capital are all that sustainability, ESG, diversity. I think it's important that the industry embraces all these things if it wants to be taken seriously.
Okay. Well, I've had quite a few more questions come in now. So, Jonathan Sinot asks, do you have any thoughts about the protection of children and their privacy when engaging in online games?
I think it's the responsibility of the games makers to make sure that children are protected. Nobody wants the industry to criticize, and the responsibility falls on the games creators to make sure those who play it are protected.
Mm, And then another one from Sally here. So, are there any up and coming studios that you think are going to have big success in the future? Any that are kind of maybe going under the radar a little bit at the moment, where you think haven't had that experience of supported so many of those that have exited or that have gone on to become large players? Are there any games companies that are kind of ones to watch for you?
there's lots, perhaps too many to mention, but I don't think this is the. I don't like to kind of pick winners in the public arena.
Yeah, fair enough. You won't be drawn on that one. Okay. Well, I think we've got time. We've got two more here. So Alex J asks, as a team of two guys looking to expand with no experience of investing, etc., what should be our first port of call? So I guess they just started out a studio and investment, something that they're thinking about, but they don't know where to start. They maybe need to have a conversation with someone like yourself, Ian, or
Yeah, I mean, obviously too soon for VC funding, so you could look at angel or friends and family if you're just starting off, um, and approach. There's two trade bodies, obviously Yuki and Tiger will have a network of investors. There's a games angel network. If you Google that, you'll find that based in the UK. Nick Button Brown, I think, runs it. You just have to do the research, and you'll find it.
Perfect. I think that's really useful. And then final question, Ian, is from Sam. I think that's Sam Collins. So what is next for you, Ian? Fresh off the back of United, Sam says you're always ahead of the curve. So what obviously the book's coming out in September. You mentioned, what else is on the horizon for you?
Well, Final Fantasy Game was my passion project, and it's the 40th anniversary. God help me, this year. So I'm writing a new book for the 40th anniversary of Final Fantasy. A new one coming out in early September. Obviously, I'm full time at Hero. We're making some extraordinary investments in that space. I got my school that's opened in Bournemouth now, so we'll be looking to perhaps open another school in due course. I'm really excited that Livingstone Academy Bournemouth is doing so well. We had 150 people, 150 places for year 7. We had 450 children apply. Sadly, we had to disappoint quite a few. So the thesis of the school will be focused around digital creativity, skills as well as qualifications, know-how as well as knowledge to make kids work ready and world ready, and make computer science and art central to their learning, moving from the passenger seat to the driver's seat of technology. So that's become a big passion project for me to enable the next generation of games makers and digital citizens.
Yeah, so that scheme's really starting to come together now.
Yeah, and of course, help finding new companies who are starting off on their journey, and helping with angel investment should they require it, and leveraging my 47 years in the industry of pattern recognition and hopefully help them along their journey.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear, Ian, that you're not sort of riding off into the sunset. You've
I'm
still
not
got...
retiring. I'm just a young kid, age 70,
Yeah.
72, having fun.
Yeah, working in the games industry keeps you that way, I suppose, doesn't it?
Well, it's a great industry. We don't have celebrity like film and TV and music, and most people in it are very humble, collaborative, and cooperative, and it's an absolute pleasure to be in this industry.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time this morning, Ian. I'm sure everyone's got so much out of your remarks there, and all the best with all of the things that you're doing moving forward, and have a great year.
Right. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
And all the best to everybody out there.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, right. So we'll move straight on to our next keynote speaker now, and we've got the brilliant Bobby Thandi joining us for this one. So if you haven't heard of Bobby previously, Bobby is the founder and CEO of award-winning games development studio XR Games. Now, XR is at the absolute cutting edge of the virtual reality and augmented reality part of the games industry. A really exciting space. It's produced blockbuster games such as Zombieland Headshot Fever and Angry Birds Under Pressure, and is generally one of the most exciting studios in the UK. So Bobby founded the company back in 2017, and he's also a board committee member for XR Stories and Sign, which is a 15 million investment by the Arts and Humanities Research Council to support R&D for companies working in digital technologies in the Yorkshire and Humber region. So this morning, Bobby's going to be talking to us about what to expect when fundraising for your game studio, what questions you need to be asking investors, and what questions they'll be asking you as well. So if we're ready to go, without further ado, I'll pass over to Bobby now. Thanks, Bobby.
Hello, my name is Bobby Thandi, and I'm the founder and CEO of XR Games. Thank you very much for that amazing introduction. We're an award-winning game studio focusing on our games. Since 2017, I've raised single-digit millions across numerous investment rounds. And today, I'd like to talk about what to expect when raising funding for your game studio. So my presentation is going to be split across these key sections. Where do you start? What do you need to get ready before investment? What to expect during the process? Red and green flags regarding potential investors. So to start off with, where do you start? You've already got a game studio, meaning you have what I like to call the golden triangle foundation, meaning you have at least two other friends to go on this venture with. One person takes care of all things tech, the second person takes care of all things creative, and the third person takes care of all things business. A game studio simply doesn't exist without all three areas covered off. And unless you're an insanely talented lone developer who can handle creative, tech, and business, or you're already very rich, you're going to need to raise dollars to fund your game studio. So where do you start? Whenever you start anything for the first time in life, you're starting with a blank piece of paper. This can be both scary, where the hell do I start? This is the start of creating something amazing. Personally, I start with answering why. Why am I doing this? I imagine most of you have probably heard of this book. If not, I strongly recommend reading it, because in business, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters why you do it. I once heard running a startup is like being repeatedly punched in the face, punctuated with intense highs on a daily basis. To take the lows and to get back up from being punched in the face, you need a very strong why. So what is your purpose, cause, or belief that will give you the energy, passion, and resilience to brush off defeats and rejections? Because with your why, you can get knocked down 9 times and have the strength to get up 10 times. I'll now explain my why. I used to work in a market stall as a kid, and with my earnings, I bought Bubble Bobble, which was the first game that I completed with my mate Steve. Neither of us had ever finished, and it was euphoric. Bubble Bobble is a two-player cooperative game, and nothing pleased me more than just managing to finish a level, turning to my friend for a high-five celebration, or a quick playful punch in Steve's ribs if we fucked up. Playing a game and sharing in the fun with a friend in real life was what made gaming so special for me. So much so that when I was vice president of digital at Dubbit, the previous game studio that I worked at that focused on kids' games, I went out and secured the Masha and the Bear IP as my kids loved that animation series. And then I set about making a co-op game that would enable my kids to play together at the same time on the same tablet, as I wanted them to share in the love of co-op gaming like I did. Also, it's been downloaded over 1 million times, which I'm very pleased with, as over 1 million households have got to enjoy co-op gaming. So, when I first tried VR, I found a technology that would enable people to play together digitally better than ever before, because we're now inside the game together. And the sense of presence in the game enables you to be able to do virtual high fives and share in the joy and pain of winning and losing. And this would be possible regardless of where we were in real life, especially as my friends are now scattered across the globe. So that's my why. And I want to make games about playing together, and VR gives me the perfect platform. From that eureka moment, XR Games' mission statement was born. It's through play that people make some of their most meaningful and lasting memories, especially with friends and family. XR Games exists to make games that create those moments. This purpose, our why, is what drives us to excel in the games we make. And if we feel we're not quite there in terms of making a game that will create lasting memories because they're so much fun to play, we'll go back to the drawing board. Now, I've banged on about why a lot. It's because I feel it's so important to get this right to help drive your company culture and to help carry you through the hard times. Thinking back to the Golden Triangle Foundation, does it actually need 3 people? That's what I did, but it's not your own. Take Dante Buckley, the good-looking fella on the left. He's the founder and CEO of Downpour Interactive. He has the skill set to do all aspects of the Golden Triangle Foundation all by himself. Back in 2015, Dante was inspired to make Onward due to the lack of tactical VR shooters in the market. He loved first-person shooter games on console and wanted that for VR as soon as he saw the Oculus dev kit. So he set out how to learn how to code and how to make a game all by himself by watching YouTube videos after dropping out of university. After a year of development, he was able to release the game on Steam Early Access in August 2016. It became a huge success, and he was able to grow his studio to 40-plus staff, become a bestseller on Quest, and do this all without external investment. He didn't have investors to answer to, nor a board to report to. He did it his way. And then his studio was acquired by Meta/Facebook last year when he was just 24 years old. So major props to him. In short, ensure you can cover off the Golden Triangle Foundation for your game studio, either by yourself or with your friends. Now, I'd like to discuss and go through what do you need to get ready before investment. If you've had any level of success in the games industry before, which itself comes from years of hard work, you should be able to just use an investor pitch deck to help raise investment. It'll be a hard and long road, and be prepared for a lot of rejections, but you should be able to. I found the best thing was to get an initial amount of investment from close supporter, a friends and family round, and use that as a building block. For example, while I was vice president of digital at Dubbit, the game studio focused on kids games, I built up a great relationship with the board of directors, one of whom, Nigel Douthwaite, invested £100,000 into XR Games, the very first cash in. This gave me the confidence to go raise VC investment. Although I kissed a lot of frogs before getting the first VC check, the best lesson I learned was to always have a warm introduction to an investor. This instantly increased how positive the meeting felt. And if you can't secure a warm introduction with an investor, you'll have little chance of securing investment. So look for mutual connections with an investor on LinkedIn, or speak with a friend who has raised investment who can vouch for you to their investors. And if you don't have those things, you're going to have to start networking. Initially, I leveraged all the credentials that the team and I had, our history in the game sector, the games we had made at our previous, the talks I'd given around the world, how I'd been headhunted by EA to lead one of their studios, but instead chose to start XR Games. It's your credentials that merit a meeting with an investor, in addition to a warm intro, and in addition to being able to explain your why. Equally important is your narrative for your pitch deck. What's your story? You need to tell a convincing story that makes sense to the investor. As an example, I'll run you through part of my story for my investor pitch deck. This upcoming section helps to convey the importance of the XR market, because not all investors are convinced on the future of VR AR when I was initially raising funding. So every 15 years, there's a new tech center. We went from mainframes to PC to web to smartphones. So what's next? Well, all the major tech companies are spending billions believing the next computing platform will be XR glasses, especially as they see this as a primary route to enter the metaverse. The metaverse being the virtual worlds focused on social connection, ideally accessed via VR headsets. As most of us know, in the book Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, the term metaverse was first used, and it outlines what this future could be like. Talking of which, Facebook have even pivoted their entire business to be focused on the metaverse, hence them being called just Meta. And Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, believes it's the next big thing that will pervade our entire lives. Side note, what I'm trying to get across to investors is that the future of XR is a big fucking deal. The XR market is to forecast to grow by a 62% compound annual growth rate to reach $464 billion by 2026. This incredible growth will motivate major console tech firms to make a push for VR gaming mergers and acquisitions to strengthen their share of the overall market. I mean, it's already happening. My friends at CodeSync were bought by Thunderful for $85 million late last year, and Vertigo Games were bought by the Embracer Group for $115 million. Also, Facebook/Meta have bought many VR studios, including the makers of Beat Saber and Onward. Side note, it's best to show investors how big your market is forecasted to be. And looking back at the history of deal sizes of Facebook online and mobile gaming studios, this table shows us something very interesting. When a new medium emerges, large studios don't put their best 100 people on the new medium. Return on investment simply isn't there to make a profit. This is known as innovator's dilemma, a phrase coined by Clayton Christensen in his book by the same name. So this leaves ample room for startups to innovate. And when the market gains traction, large companies simply acquire the best performing startups to bring those skills in-house. Those are the yellow highlighted rows. But if you look at the white rows, those are the studios that waited until the new medium gained mass market adoption. And look at how much more expensive those acquisitions were. They have a B at the end of their exit price. Side note, by referencing history and showing data points from the past, investors will easily be able to project the same happening in VR. And as it's already happening, it's easy to understand why placing a bet on XR Games makes fingers crossed. Further, according to a Morning Brew Harris survey, US consumers would prefer to purchase XR hardware from Apple versus Facebook by a multiple of 6. This allows us to project that when Apple's XR headset launches, it will significantly grow the overall XR market. Side note, show investors where significant growth can come from. This shows investors that time is of the essence and they need to get in now before it takes off. There's significant and increasing levels of global investment into the XR verticals. Previously, we had a lot of hype around VR in 2014, but investors got their fingers burnt, expecting mass market adoption imminently. But they invested too much too soon, but there wasn't enough VR players to purchase the content, and therefore the return on investment wasn't there to be had. That said, from 2015 onwards, we can see increasing levels of investment. All the data points now indicate we're at the slope of enlightenment on the Gartner hype cycle. That's now, but my gosh, back in 2017/2018, when I didn't have the benefit of the slope of enlightenment, I was in the trough of disillusionment, which made it very hard to raise investment. And every time a new emerges, the revenue and market size starts small, but then it starts to grow. Look at console in green, PC in light blue, and mobile in red. All three have grown the overall market for games. And although VR in pink is still relatively small, I genuinely believe, along with Facebook, Apple, Sony, and other tech firms, that XR will become the next computing platform. And it's for this reason I firmly believe in the future of XR. And it'll be those XR gaming studios who have been honing their craft for years that will be able to start reaping the rewards when the market begins to take off. Side note, show you understand the wider market and how it will grow by referencing the past. So, the $64,000 question. When will XR go mainstream? Personally, I think it'll be in the next 4 years, so by 2026. This slide represents my assumptions of pivotal moments in the XR market, such as the increased adoption of the Quest headset, which is currently the key headset at the moment with 10 million units sold, PlayStation's upcoming PSVR 2, which is due out in the holidays this year, and the upcoming Apple headset, which will significantly help grow the overall market. Side note, show investors that you understand what needs to happen for mass market adoption to take place. Hopefully, on slides on what's my story help showcase how you could do it too. And if you haven't had previous success in the games industry, you can still raise investment. Obviously, you'll need a pitch deck, but you can also provide your potential investor with a playable demo, which will help increase your chances of securing investment. Don't get me wrong, you'll still need to kiss a lot of frogs, and getting from a demo to a shipped game is not easy, as most of you probably are aware. So don't expect investors falling over themselves to invest, even when you make a really fun playable demo. Side note, when raising investment for your studio, you're hoping to raise enough money to make a slate of games. But while you're trying to do this, you can always publishers for funding as per the traditional games industry route. The best thing I've found, whereby I'm not having to chase investors and investors are chasing me, is to release successful games. For example, our Angry Birds Pressure VR game, which was shipped on time, on budget, and to critical acclaim, made it easier to raise investment in 2019 versus 2017. Whereas Zombieland VR not only shipped on time, on budget, and won a bunch of awards, but it's also a commercial hit, which has resulted in more investors now chasing me. My point is that you'll be most likely raising funding multiple times. Securing your first institutional investor will be the hardest raise you do, but subsequent fundraising should be easier, especially when you have a hit game. So you raise a small amount of money from friends and family. You use that as a building block to raise a bigger amount using your pitch deck with your why, your story, your credentials, and then trust your Golden Triangle Foundation to deliver a good game. And once you get there, you'll have a solid foundation from where you can really scale your game studio. Quick side note, if you're fortunate enough to have lots of investor interest, I'd start looking into the investors' values. What are their values? Do they align with your own company values? Can these values be evidenced? Choosing an investor is like choosing a life partner. You're going to be in it for the long haul, so choose wisely. So, what to expect during the process? During my first fundraise, for every 50 investors that I tried to speak with, I was rejected by 49, and that's not a nice experience. So see it as though you're working your way through a sales funnel. 50 investors at the top should result in you being able to speak with around 40. A solid, warm intro will get you in the door. Of those 40, at least 15 should request a follow-up meeting, of which 6 take it very seriously, and 3 of which will write an IM to submit to their IC, of which 1 should hopefully give you the money. When you get to the stage of having follow-up meetings with a potential investor, you really want them to start talking about pulling together an IM, which is an investment memorandum. This is a doc that investors need to write to convince the investment committee that they should invest in your studio. An IC are the most senior folks in the investment firm who get to decide which investments to make. If the IC meeting goes well, you'll be looking at more due diligence, and then hopefully a term sheet will be received. A term sheet is a heads of terms document regarding the key points of the investment. For example, the amount, the percentage equity required, good and bad leaver clauses, etc. And then you can start work on the final 2 key documents, the shareholders agreement and the articles of association. There's also a whole bunch of other documents you'll need to provide in final due diligence, but they're all relatively straightforward. Side note, it's a full-time gig, raising investment, and it'll take up to 6 months of your life, of your life too. That's what happened to me. And although being rejected sucks, you will receive lots of useful feedback that you can use to iterate on your pitch deck. As you begin to explore investment options, you might get tempted to work with an introducer, someone who will help write your pitch deck, introduce you to investors, and charge you a fee for doing so. Personally, I did not do this, but obviously each scenario is different, and I'd recommend speaking with an advisor who knows what's best for you. For me, they wanted paying up front, money I didn't have early on, and they'll want to know all the investors' use benefit to them, being that their network increases, but they won't share all the investors that they know. Further, no one can create a better pitch deck than you after you spend weeks on it, and no one can tell your story better than you. Further, each investor you meet today might reject you, but later down the line, when you've proven you've done what you said you'd do, they might invest later. As such, I found it incredibly useful to invest my time doing it myself, as it resulted in a wide pool of investors that know me. So when your work begins to get recognized in public, you'll find these investors are keen to pick up the conversation. Definitely recommend sharing positive news stories in the press, on socials, and LinkedIn. It does get noticed. And obviously, if you do get rejected, keep it very, very polite. And I really wish I had a corporate advisor when I first raised investment funding, as I'm finding that they are super. They see deals all day, every day, just like investors, but they're on your side of the table to help bring alignment across all the different stakeholders. What I mean by this is that you should treat an investor as someone on the other side of the table. They want to get the best deal that they can for themselves, not you. Once the deal goes through, you'll find the investor is now on your side of the table, as they want the best outcome for your game studio. But if you're raising money again, the investor will then be on the other side of the table. Having a corporate advisor always on your side will help advise when things are misaligned. Also, hire the best lawyer you can afford. You're going to be going toe-to-toe with your investors' lawyers, who will be adding all sorts of clauses into the term sheet, shareholders agreement, and articles of association. So you need someone equally savvy to point out what's fair and what isn't. You'll be pleased to hear that although legal fees can be up to £50,000, you shouldn't have to pay anything until the deal is complete and the investment funds are in your company bank account. Expect lots of questions, so many questions. If you're fortunate enough to receive a signed term sheet, you'll be entering full due diligence. This is when investors want to turn every stone in your company's history. My advice here is not to try and hide any skeletons in the closet. They will come out. So always be open and transparent about everything when you're in the due diligence phase, as per any relationship in life. If you break the trust, you're screwed. So finally, I'd like to cover off the red and green flags regarding potential investors. So number one, it sounds daft, but do your homework. Ensure they have money. I've wasted time talking to investors who actually didn't have money. They were trying to raise funds themselves and wanted to state to their potential investors that they had exciting startups to invest in. Absolute madness. So do your diligence. Speak with other startups connected with this investor or any mutual connections on LinkedIn. Point two, find out the size of their fund. There's no point taking on investment if they can't follow on their money. This doesn't apply to angel investors, but for the bigger checks, have follow-on money. This will make it easier to raise more money from the same investor in the future, assuming you do everything that you say you're going to do. Listen to your gut. Is it telling you that this person might be a dickhead? If so, move on, no matter how much you need the money. Network. How can the investor elevate your business through their contacts? As part of the getting to know you phase, they should be introducing you to folks within their network, perhaps to get to meet folks who can grow your studio or provide you with much needed contact at a company you're trying to do business with. Are they founder friendly? Investors who have been entrepreneurs themselves in the past really stand out here. They know what your journey can be regarding the highs and lows, and they want to equip you to shoot for the stars. As such, they might enable you to take cash off the table to help alleviate concerns regarding, for example, your mortgage. You'll have to give up equity, mind. Equity that should be worth a lot more in the future. So that's up to you as to what you do. Also, speak with multiple of this investor. What do they say about your investor? And are they really founder friendly? How can they prove they've got your back? This can be evidenced in numerous ways. For example, they set aside 10% of the equity pool or create 10% equity for growth shares. And they want you and your entire team to participate. So the investor is diluting themselves to create this equity, as they know it's you and your team that will drive all the value in your business. Growth shares can be on top of your equity as an extra. Okay, after all, if you drive an exit which is 10, 50, or 100 million more than expected, you and your team should be rewarded for the extra upside. Also, just note how fast or slow they are to respond to calls, emails, texts, etc. The faster, the better. Some Silicon Valley VCs get a term sheet out in 8 days from first meeting. I've not met or heard any of the UK investors who can do the same, but the point is, ask how long things will take, and then ask their portfolio founders how long they actually took. Trust. An example might be an introduction to a possible chairperson, or to an advisor, or a non-exec director. This stood out to me. The deal might not happen, but they're open to sharing their network, and it lets you at least walk away with a really valuable contact. Note, this is that said person will be feeding back to the potential investor whether or not you're investable. Sector expertise may or may not be something you want. If it's just money, they could leave you to run your studio as you see best and advise on all the business side. That said, a sector specialist investor could help elevate your business by creating a network of game studio CEOs for you and your senior management team to lean on to help solve hard problems. Also, read in between the lines. You'll know this when you see it, and watch for investors who can piece together truths from what you've not said. It really does separate the super smart investors from just the smart ones. Thank you for your time. If you'd like to get in touch, please feel free to do so, whether that's on email, Twitter, or Insta. Thank you very much.
Value there, I think, on the kind of investment side of things. Really interesting that, you said out of 50 investors, you were rejected by 49 of them. So obviously that's just par for the course, I guess. But how do you kind of stay resilient and stay positive in light of that, and I guess
Yes.
advice for others who might be going through that, they're at the early stage where the concept's there, you have a very clear idea about what you want to do, but perhaps the investors aren't quite there yet. So how do you stay positive?
That's a very good question, especially when you've done weeks and weeks of meetings, and you've presented their investment committee, you've brought them to the studio, done playable demos, you've presented their investment committee perhaps, and you met wider members of the team, and everything looks positive, and then you're spending significant amounts of time here, and then you get rejected, or you get rejected after the very first meeting. It is brutal, and you are taking knockbacks, but you have to remain absolutely positive, because if you relay any negativity to your team, who are obviously trying to build a game and work on stuff, or you're staring down death's door and you really need the investment, but you've got enough money in your bank account to do payroll for one more month, that's they're the hard times that come with being a CEO, and that's what you just got to handle in yourself. But what I would do, fitness, I love playing football. That hour I play football on a week is, blissful. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about family. I'm not thinking about fundraising, not thinking about any problems, just in an absolute flow state, playing football. So football, exercise, playing video games, going to the gym, sauna, steam room, meditating, just, it's an old cliche, but there's a list of 10 things that many leaders would swear by that helps them de-stress, keep positive. Just recommend going through that list for sure. But you absolutely have to stay positive all the time and have faith it's going to happen. I mean, that's that Sir Ian Livingstone mentioned, where he said only 2% of game studios receive funding. I was like, holy shit. I didn't realize I was fortunate enough to be in that final 2%. But I can see that, because it's brutal raising investment, but stay positive. And as I say, once you start making hit games, it's very simple, because everyone wants to invest in you now. It's just getting through that initial hard stage.
Yeah. And really interesting as well that, as the CEO, as the person who's in charge of those conversations with investors, you do have to kind of shoulder that yourself, because you don't want to sort of demoralize the rest of the team, kind of thing, right? So yeah, absolutely. I think looking after yourself, because I imagine that can be quite an isolating experience.
Definitely, I have a close cousin that we're in the studio here. We'll play pool, table tennis, ping pong in the evenings, but I can just vent and release everything with him. So it kind of protects the team. It protects family life. Family life is hard as it is, and they don't need to know about every single up and down. So having one person you can share what's going on with is super valuable as well. And surround yourself with amazing advisors. Starting off, it's very hard to get high caliber advisors, but now I feel very fortunate in having advisors who are on the other side of the rainbow, who have had mega successful exits, who have been there, seen it, done it. They've walked my shoes. And having that kind of counsel really helps you kind of see what it's going to be like when you resolve the issue, or you're in the boardroom doing whiteboard sessions. But finding yourself, someone you can just vent with, but more importantly, getting advisors who are on the other end of the rainbow, I found to be super valuable.
Yeah, it really ties in quite well with the question that Andreas has asked as well, Bobby. So Andreas asks, how do you balance the full-time job of raising investment in with the various roles you already have within an existing business? So again, is it sort of those kind of health and well-being things?
Very good question. And there is no balance. Investment funding, the first VC second VC check, and they paid for a life coach, executive coach, to work with me. And he's absolutely brilliant. If anyone wants a brilliant life coach, get in touch and I'll do the introduction. And he went through this in the initial exercise. He kind of he wanted to bring balance. He wanted to bring a holistic balance to my entire life. And after the first session, is like 10 out of 10 for work, 9 out of 10 with your kids, because you'll ensure weekend times are always with your kids, but minus 10 on your partner. And I was like, yeah, it was obvious, but it's only when I kind of went through this session, I was like, my life is not in balance. And you're working every hour God sends, right? 60, 70 hours, 70 hours weeks minimum. So, truth be told, there is no balance. But the way I see it and the way I come to terms with it, it's a lifestyle. I'm also the one who's fortunate enough to be in America 8 times a year, in LA, and hanging out with celebrities, models, dancers, with clients, Hollywood film studios, and you're out fancy meals, whining and dining. That's a great upside, and it's kind of like a little holiday, but you're also getting the deals over the line. So you just have to take the rough with the smooth and just navigate as best you can. But there is no work-life balance. It's just a way of life. It's a way of life that I absolutely love, and just doing the best that you can.
Yeah, accepting the lifestyle for what it is, and I guess doing little things that you can and not let your business consume you, even though it sounds as if it is going to be all consuming. So
you've got to love what you do, and we're very fortunate that our passions we actually do, and that alignment of passion and work, for me, it feels like play every day, right? We're making video games. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, one of the thing that I wanted to ask Bobby was those stats you put out about sort of VR adoption and the market for those being something like 26 billion in 2020, moving up to 464 billion by 2026. I mean, that is a crazy amount of takeoff that we're right on the sort of cusp of. So I guess something that you'd be thinking about is how do you, as a company, kind of grow with that market, and how do you, not, ensure that you put a stake in the ground of the market, and that, you're going to continue to be a significant player in it when there's going to be this enormous takeoff, it seems like.
It's a very good question. I'm in the middle of just closing another investment round. We've just about to sign a lease on 12,000 square feet in Leeds city centre. It's like 3 times bigger than the current place. I have an internal talent acquisition manager starting early February. We've hired in head of HR and wellbeing late last year. And so, the next 12 months, I need to double headcount from 50 to 100. And we feel very fortunate that the roles will get over 1,000 applicants, and the senior roles, hundreds of applicants. And that's just off the website. And by supporting that with a talent acquisition team, I feel super confident in getting the high quality of staff we need. And on that point, it's worth noting, when you get 1,000 applicants for a junior role, if you are someone trying to get into the industry, my gosh, you not only have to be an absolute ninja at game design. So let's take a junior game designer that we hired last year. Not only did she get a first in a university degree, not only did she win placements at, Rockstar and Sumo and other big game studios around here, she's also a writer, an animator, and an artist. And it's having these multi-skills really stood out, in addition to her being a great game designer. So, we feel fortunate when you get 1,000 applicants, the one you're hiring is kind of the best of the pool. And that person, truly finds games as a passion, and excels at what she does. And she'll have multiple other skills as well. So super excited and pumped for this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant, Bobby. Well, yeah, thanks so much for your time today. Really enjoyed your presentation, and thanks for answering some of those questions there. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much for giving the opportunity to present after Sir Ian Livingstone. Has been an absolute legend of mine. To be doing the keynote after him is crazy, but hey, all good. Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
Bobby. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, we're just going to take a short break now for 15 minutes, and then we're going to return for our panel discussion and the big reveal of this year's index as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and we'll be back in 15. Okay, thank you.